So, as predicted, the deceased turned out to be Harper Lloyd. That went smoothly. I'll print this out and attach it to the medical records.
56, amerikanisch, weiß, blond. Harper, weiblich, blaue Augen, Light, okay. Fenstereintrag 91. Tot. 28.09. Ordnungswidriges Verhalten, aggressives Verhalten unter Alkoholeinfluss. Okay. Ordnungswidriges Verhalten, Belästigung und Vandalismus. Ordnungswidriges Verhalten, aggressives Verhalten, Belästigung und Vandalismus. Belästigung, aggressives Verhalten unter Alkoholeinfluss. Ladendiebstahl, geringwertige Sache. Ordnungswidriges Verhalten, Belästigung und Vandalismus. Ladendiebstahl. Kleindiebstahl und ordnungswidriges Verhalten. Teilnahme an einer Schlägerei unter Drogeneinfluss. Respekt, Harper.
Great. Now we can go back to my inspection.
Okay.
I'm adding the name of the deceased. I'll start the internal examination by taking fluid from the victim's brain. A needle inserted through the nose will do the trick.
Ah, wir hatten hier einen anderen. Jane Doe hieß sie vorher.
If the victim was alive when she fell into the well, she must have swallowed water fighting for her life, and then diatoms, characteristics of pooled water like a well, got into the body.
So.
In the meantime, I'll check the sample under the microscope. I'm sure that these algae traces will be found in the samples taken from the well where police found the body.
Gucken wir mal.
Now I need to adjust the knobs properly and place the diatom in the center of the slide. Diatoms are single-celled microscopic algae. I won't even notice an army of diatoms from this distance. Great. This way I'll see if I'm dealing with a large concentration of these algae. The aperture still needs adjustment. The image is too dark. Oh, I'm finally starting the aperture. No, nah, too much. No, I'm finally starting to see something here. And it's not a dirty and perfect. The aperture still no. The aperture still needs adjustment. No. I'm finally starting to see something here. I won't even notice an army of diatoms from this distance. It's not a dirty and perfect. Great. This way I'll see if I'm dealing with a large concentration of these algae. As expected, we find the aforementioned algae in the solution. Their upper part, epitheca, which overlaps the lower, hypotheca, is clearly visible. The presence of diatoms in the brain samples taken indicate that the deceased was certainly alive when she fell into the water and was possibly conscious.
Okay.
Since there were diatoms in the brain, it means that many more of them must have entered the body. Studies of the rest of the organs will most likely confirm this hypothesis.
Keine äußeren Anzeichen für eine eingehende Untersuchung des Gehirns. Flüssigkeit wurde zur Analyse auf das Vorhandensein von Diatomen gesammelt. Die Menge der in der Flüssigkeit gefundenen Diatomen deutet darauf hin, dass das Opfer noch bei Bewusstsein war, als es in Wasser ging. Also Fremdschulden können wir schon mal streichen.
I can finally get to the practical part. I must be extra careful because the skin of the deceased is very stretched. I wouldn't want an explosion here.
So. Dann.
You can immediately see a very large swelling of the organs. In addition, all internal organs are very congested.
Oh,
I
ja.
proceed to remove the rib cage. It's easy to see that the ribs have been imprinted in the lungs. So, I'm going to start by drawing blood from the lungs for testing for diatoms.
Dafür brauchen
If
wir Spritze.
diatoms were only present in the lungs, this would mean that the victim was placed in the well after death, and the perpetrator wanted to get rid of the corpse in this way. Now, I remove the lungs and proceed. Taking the lungs in my hand, I feel that the tissues have lost their elasticity, which is the result of water emphysema. In addition, there is significant swelling of the organs, and as a result, we have a nice imprint of the ribs. The emphysema itself, it's clear how far it's progressed, which is characteristic of drowning.
Lungengewebe mit fehlender Elastizität und fortgeschrittenem Ephysem.
Corpses found in water are worth examining with a tomograph. However, I can't count on such luxuries, so I must reach for a more archaic technology. A bucket and water.
So.
My old but trusted centrifuge.
Ach nee, das müssen wir noch
Ideal for all the fluid
Okay.
tests I need to perform during an
Eimer
autopsy.
und Wasser. War ich hinten im Räumchen. Warum flackert das Licht? Da steht wer. Was suchst du hier? Verpiss dich.
Who? Has anyone been here?
Mir läuft gerade kalt den Rücken runter.
I hope no one dipped a mop in it. It's best to go to the lab for this.
Ach, vom Waschbecken im Labor. Ja, nicht hier, sondern im Labor. Entschuldigung.
Historically, the lung float test is used to detect infanticide. The water should be at room temperature. That's enough. To test for this, I have to place the lungs in a container of water. This checks if there is air in the lungs. And speaking of lungs, everything is ready to bring them here. Of course, such a study isn't without flaws. Air may have entered a newborn's airways during resuscitation attempts. Gases released during decomposition could also give a false result.
Schwabbel, schwabbel.
In this case,
Schwabbel,
however,
schwabbel.
it's about
Schwabbel,
something
schwabbel.
else, namely the amount of fluid in the lungs. To test for this, I have to place the lungs in a container of water and wait to see if they fall or if they will float on the surface.
Sie sinken.
Just as I assumed, the lungs collapsed easily. Fluid could have entered the lungs during panic attempts to catch breath underwater, but it could also be the result of bacterial infections or cancer, so further investigation is needed.
Wahrscheinlich jetzt schneiden. Jupp.
I move on to dissecting the lungs of the deceased. You can hear the distinct, very unpleasant crackling of the tissues being cut through. The parenchyma is remarkably pale, although small hemorrhagic foci and petechia are present on the surface. All right. Now, I will check the collected fluid under a microscope. If we find 20 diatoms on the slide, it can be considered drowning, and our result is not false positive due to possible contaminations. Let's see, although I expect we'll find them easily. The aperture still... Nah. Oh, I'm finally starting to see something here. I won't even notice an army of diatoms from this distance. Great. This man, it's not a man. Perfect.
Okay. Was ist das?
As expected. In solution, the diatoms are clearly visible. There are smaller and larger clusters of them. There will definitely be more than 20 of them. I'll make a note of all this. So far, this case looks pretty standard. It's clear from the beginning that it's drowning. Well, the procedure requires me to check everything anyway.
Die Querschnittsanalyse zeigte, dass das Lungenparenchym blass war und kleine hämorrhagische Herde aufwies. Die Untersuchung der Lunge deutet auf ein nasses Ertrinken hin. Außerdem ergibt die mikroskopische Analyse eine große Menge an Diatomen in der Flüssigkeit.
So, I move on to checking the other organs. I ligate the heart and then remove it for inspection. Strongly developed putrefactic hemolysis of the organ can be seen at first glance. Apart from that, no signs of a heart attack or other heart disease.
Herz ohne Anzeichen einer Krankheit. Stark ausgeprägte Hämolyse als Folge des Ertrinkens.
I move on to the next organ. This time, it's the liver. It's immediately apparent that the deceased didn't care for herself. Like most organs, her liver is enlarged and severely congested. The beginnings of cirrhosis are visible in some areas.
Die Leber ist vergrößert und stark verstopft. Der Beginn einer Leberzirrhose ist sichtbar.
I transfer the organ to a board and proceed to dissect.
Schneiden, schneiden, schneiden.
The cross-section clearly shows dilated veins and many small hemorrhagic foci. I must admit that this is quite a feat, considering the rather young age of the deceased. Harper enjoyed drinking so much that she might not have lasted a few more years.
Leber verhärtet mit stark erweiterten Venen, alkoholische Zirrhose.
I move on to the stomach. I take a sample of the fluid for testing.